Hello, Culture Matters Podcast. Here's a quote before I introduce our show and our co-host. Quote, how did I get into engineering? Somebody saw something. Paul Lucido. Our co-host today, the one and only Paul Lucido. We're back again with another 30 days of thought and friends. Andrew Berman is here with us in spirit, looking over us like our Father Almighty. And we're talking about relationships today on page 35 of 30 Days of Thought. And before we hit record, there was the gold, right? The show before the show. And I wrote this quote down. I thought it was so powerful for this excerpt today, which starts off, what are relationships? Paul.
Yes, sir.
Because right before we hit record, I was sharing how a mentor urged me towards a certain way. And then you said, how did I get into engineering? Somebody saw something. So what are relationships? That's the opening question of 30 Days of Thought here.
Ooh, this going to go a lot of areas. So look, let's just start with the obvious, right? Relationships are human connections, right? They're connections between people. They could be familiar relationships. They could be a romantic relationships, professional relationships, platonic relationships. Need I go on? There's all types of relationships that could be fostered over time through human interaction. And then the other piece to it, which, as I read through your synopsis there, the other piece to relationships, as I see it, is the power of influence. We as humans, Jay, obviously are always looking to align with another human. We're looking to say, hey, do you see this the way I see this? Do we have a mutual understanding? And so for me, that really kind of outlines what relationships are. The other piece to relationships obviously is, being forgiving, being, not compromising your principles, but being willing to maybe step back and listen to the other person, being empathetic and understanding where they're coming from. And then, in order to coalesce, there's a little bit of give and take, right? So these are all little factors, little aspects of relationships. Going to your point about the comment I made in our precursor, is that the right word? Yeah, that is how people get opportunities. Somebody might see something in you and it sparks their interest, and then they have, through their relationships, they're able to leverage that opportunity and give you a leg up, a leg in, a way out, whatever it might be. And so for me, yeah, many moons ago, because it's been a long time, I was, as you said, in the world of engineering and design, specifically in the radar systems groups way back when for Hughes. And that all started with a relationship. Quite honestly, that relationship, if you recall, was my uncle, who he's no longer with us. He actually headed up a department, and he had the clout and the pull, and he got me in. He saw something in me. He said, you're not going to waste your talents away. And through discipline and hard work, I built myself into that guy over the course of that time. And incidentally, I had somebody reach out to me on LinkedIn as a result of that. We were talking about working on the FA-18, F-14 Tomcat, talking about doing he was, I think what did he say? The APG-73, he flew it. So he was actually in the field.
Wow.
Flying while I was in an office, in a think tank with a bunch of engineers working on the different little components that go inside some of these different aircrafts. Anyway, all through relational interaction. And of course, you got to have the education to boot. But the idea is that how, where does it start? It starts no different than you and I have, fostered our relationship here that we have. Look at where this has gone.
Yeah, well, I think the first you came on the show was that episode 11?
10.
10. We're
10,
we just released, I think, 932.
almost 1,000 episodes.
And I'm pretty sure we're destined to be at 1,000. No, yeah, 932. The American Gift, Part 4. I believe we're destined to be at 1,000 August 28th at this pace.
Wow. By the way, Jay, congratulations to you. I want to say this publicly. I was watching, part of that interview with Jordan Peterson, and I thought that was just an amazing moment. I felt that for you because
Thank
I
you.
know how important that relationship is.
Isn't it a little weird, overwhelming, and is it ineffable? Like, yeah, what is that relationship, right? This is a mentee or a student from afar reading the textbook over all those years, the other books, more palatable books, the mentee meeting the mentor in a setting of a group. It's like, what does that mean about the relation? Is what it like? I think about these things. What relationship? There's me. It's like there's people, the fans of Elvis. All right, so like you have Elvis, and then how many relationships, like what relationship? The relationship I have with this person that doesn't know me, that right? They don't have a relationship with me. I have a relationship with
Right.
them. That
Yes.
leads to, in my mind, a very interesting psychological experiment. Like, like the fan effect or I
Hmm.
said there's these interesting physiological responses that occur meeting a relationship, if almost like a stalker. Like in those serial killer movies, like how the stalker. I just
Yes.
watched. Okay, I'm
That's
going.
interesting.
Speaking, I just watched this amazing movie the other day called Copycat from the '90s
Yes,
with
I think I know the
Sigourney
movie.
Weaver.
Yes,
With
I think I know
Sigourney
the movie.
Weaver.
Yep.
Yeah, I hope. But if Jordan ever listens to this, sorry, Jordan. It's like the analogy is a little aggressive, but like in this movie, you got the serial killer that's trying to copycat all these other serial killers, and when he's tracking down the women that he's using as a means to that end, that he wants to be perceived as like the best one of all time.
Right.
He's stalking them, he's following them around, he's watching them. How is it any different than the people we idolize in society that we never meet, right? We have all of our we're fans of people. There's
Yes.
this element of almost like, how do you describe it? Obsession or
I was going
obsessiveness or
I was going to say to a degree, admiration would be a word that I would look at because you're admiring these people. You're trying to model yourself after these people. I mean, using that analogy about how you were following Jordan. Well, let's look at it this way. First of all, how that got to the level and how nice to have the opportunity to be able to bring somebody like him in to tag the American Gift and have him on that stage with you. But to me, when I looked at that and I think about the people I follow, what you learn is if you're genuine, I believe that humans can detect that. Now, I know you can argue and say, well, how do they detect that through text messages? How do they detect that through, comments that are being left in the drip in the comment section of, let's say, Facebook or one of the social media platforms? That could be argued. I don't know, because now we have AI and all kinds of things, right? That could be putting all that together. But I remember, and I have to believe this, when I was following Alan Lightman, which I still do, and I reached out privately, I believe that the message that came back to me came from him. And I think it's the fact that I saw something that maybe others didn't pick up on in his book. I think, if I recall, I talked about his daughter because I remember he talked about his daughter, and I have a daughter. So I was showing through relationships how I found his book, it was my daughter that found the book, and through my relationship with my daughter, how she got me started on reading on this particular author. And he had this special relationship with his daughter, and that's how I made that connection. And I didn't see anybody else talk about that in any of the comments. They're talking about, physics, and they're talking about his transcendent experiences and all those things, which I did talk about. But I feel like there's a component there that relates to what we're talking about. Here I am trying to form a human connection, which he's big on the humanities. I'm trying to form a human connection with him by singling out something that was very special. It was no different than when I met Arnold Schwarzenegger for the very first time. I met the governor. He was the governor now. There's a photo literally in my study of Arnold and I shoulder to shoulder, although his shoulder is a little bit higher than my shoulder. He's a pretty big dude. But he and I were there, and I remember I walked up to him, and I think I told you this before. And I told my buddy who I was with, I said, I'm going to say something to Arnold that only Arnold will know and appreciate. And when I shook his hand, I did. And it had relevance to do with his original idol, which was Reg Park. And I remember going up to him and saying, Arnold, it's an honor or a pleasure to meet you. I shook his hand. I said, it's finally great to meet my Reg Park after 34 years. And he looked at me and he leaned back and he said, I just saw him last week. I said, really? And that immediately created this connection, because I knew something that was at a much deeper level, let's say, than maybe the masses that were in that room that wanted to talk politics and other things, but didn't really know who Arnold was before he became the governor. So anyway, I'm digressing now, but I'm using these as little nuggets of how you develop relationships with people. It's so important to get to know your audience and understand. Go ahead, Jay. I see you. I see you
No,
want.
I'm right. No, finish your thought. I'm
Mhm.
taking notes.
Well, no, look, and what thoughts do I really have here? I think they're pretty. I think most people can relate to this. Get to know your audience. If you're going to study up like you did, you studied up on Jordan Peterson. The next thing you know, you're taking his courses. The next thing you know, you're communicating with them, and before you know it, you're on stage and you are the interviewer now, which was amazing. So to me, that had to happen through a series of steps, and obviously you resonated is the word I was looking for. You clearly resonated with this man. Maybe he's going, look, I got a lot of followers and a lot of people I talk to, but maybe in his gut, he's thinking, wow, I was able to out to somebody, a young person, and influence them a little bit, inspire them. And that probably makes him brings him some joy. I think that there's some joy in that. Even if you're way up the ladder and you're so above it all, we're still humans, and it still means something when somebody sees you for who you are. Doesn't that feel good when somebody goes, wow, that person really saw me for who I am? That's a true human connection in a true relationship. That's
Mm.
beyond love. That's beyond professional. That just has to do with that primal human connection. And I think, anyway, I can go on and on, Jay, but
This is really helpful, and okay. So here's what came to me from your
from my word salad.
no. We need to pay attention. So you shared something you did with Arnold that I think is like okay. Here's my It is key to have a relationship with yourself, not to worship another. Like the integrate. What if there's a relationship between, yeah, how integrated we are with how we would show up or relate to that other. So for example, like the person that knows nothing about Arnold, has never even experienced his work, let alone his biography,
Right.
haven't put that attention and intention behind. They're just there and excited because other people are excited. And now that, they go up to that person of celebrity and there's just like a bumbling mess of angst and projection versus the person that uh yeah has the knowledge, has the intention, is going into it. It's actually Dr. Peterson talked about this in the keynote. It was refreshing. It was the idea that when you go into a new relationship, how much are you taking versus what you're giving?
Hmm.
Like, is it you're just taking everything for them, or you try to give as much as you can? And
Right.
what, you know, be cognizant of how much. And I think there's something to recognize when we're talking about worship. We're talking about heroes. Uh, 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 I was talking with Brad the other day about this. They say don't meet your heroes. He said, that's what they say,
Hmm.
and I think we have to meet our heroes for us to be a hero.
It's an interesting perspective. Do you
Like
think?
like if I never meet my hero, first of all, uh, if all of our heroes are living, we don't. What's the likelihood we'll ever be a hero in our own journey? Uh, it's that dichotomy of the student teacher. Learn from all my students. I much more than they learn from me. If that breaks, I'm not I'm not as good as I think I am. So there's a couple things there, but the one biggest takeaway that came from your sharing was, and when I was sharing about my experience was, I think there's a relation between the integrated self and worship of other selves.
Mhm.
Worship of other people has a relationship with the integration of our own relationship with ourself. And that has a relationship with things you listed earlier, the family, faith, community. Well, you said family, business, platonic, romantic.
Right.
But like your example of how you showed up with Arnold to me is, at least you did, you had due diligence and you were thinking about the other person, not just yourself. And even in that, there's a degree of responsibility.
And I will add this too. It had to do with my approach. I didn't come up there gushing like a wide eyed kid with a lollipop in my mouth. When I did that, I knew in my head how I wanted to approach him. We were in a setting, it was somewhat professional. We were actually at a dinner, a fundraiser. In fact, I think they raised $300,000 that night, if I remember right, which was a lot back then. And I remember that when I approached him, it's how I approached him with confidence, but it's the way I said it and without making a big deal about it. And he just responded so casually back to me. And then from that point in the night went on, and I will add that I brought a book with me, which I didn't think I would ever do something like this because it's not my style. But I had the book since I was 14 and a half years old. In fact, part of the pages were practically falling out of it. And I had it in the car. They
Uh,
had the Secret Service guys with the little earpieces and crap, around the house that we were at. And one of my friends who still runs a advertising firm up in Sacramento, very very well successful firm called Randall Communications. His name was Jeff Randall, and he knew Arnold because he was helping him with this campaign. And anyway, to cut this to the story, he said, "Governor, my good friend Paul here has got a book in his car that he's had since he was like a kid." And Arnold just leans down before he finishes his sentence and he says, "Go get your book. I'll sign it." And I just went, in my head, I was going, shit. I said, great. Went, got my book. He signed the book. I still have it. The point is, there was no hesitation, there was no weirdness. It was such a great moment for me because it validated me a little bit personally. But more importantly, it makes for a great story. I don't really share that story with too many people. Sometimes people come to the house and I go, "Hey, is that her home right there?" Yeah, and then there's a little backstory behind it. I mean,
I think, well, now
it
you're
was
sharing it
fun.
with
It was
millions.
a
Now
fun
you're
moment.
sharing it
It
with
was a fun
millions of
moment.
people. So that's cool.
It
Now, this
was
is
a
the
fun
other
moment.
thing that I thought is that, I think there's a humility in it. You know, I don't want to be the person that doesn't follow anyone living.
Right.
I actually, I want to be humble and grateful more than Rule 11 and beyond order. Do not let yourself become resentful, deceitful, and arrogant. So I also want to make sure I'm clear. I I think that what I said earlier about the integration of the individual, how integrated we are, will have a relationship with how we relate to our idols. I think so.
Yes.
And um I don't think I would have studied the doctor's work so deeply had I been more integrated. I could have the content, the education as a consequence of the study, but not necessarily have myself caught up to the content. And so I don't want to create a false impression. There was absolutely a that physiological response of the excitement of like the meeting, the idol, the hero, all of that. And I, that's just where uh I don't know. Yeah, I think I'd rather be the person that tries to meet all the heroes and all the teachers and show up in the most reciprocal way
Hmm.
possible. Um to as opposed to being too proud as a consequence of, let's say, insecure and the what is it like, intending to avoid or control how I would potentially show up. Like, how can any of us ever know where we fall in our hero's journey if we don't pursue like, for example, the heroes. I wanted the book signed because I want the spirit in my office.
Right on.
I want Warren Buffett's grass. I have his grass right here in my
Nice.
office. I'm channeling that. I'm not having it so I could tell everybody that comes to my house, "Oh, I got Buffett's grass." I never bring it up unless it's brought up. I have
Right
it so that I can look at the grass and say, "I need to work harder today."
on.
I want the signing of a maps a meeting because I'm channeling that energy. It's like, but anyway, yeah, it's an interesting that there's the relationship with the hero is important. The relationship with and it's revealing. I guess that's my whole point here is the relationship with the hero is revealing and reveal our degree of our own integration of our own identity, which has a relationship with relationships and how we can cultivate relationships and
Very great.
maintain relationships
Yeah.
and have relationships. It's like, I want to be able to be a fan of others and be a leader of others. If I'm only a fan, what am I? A sycophant? If I'm only a leader, what am I? A tyrant? So I look
Yes.
at that, like, if I look at people's Facebook, Instagrams, and like, if they don't follow anyone, not one person, to me, that's a sign to look deeper. Like, what's going on there? What are
That's an
they
interesting
hiding?
Well, are they hiding or are they just looking to gain followers and they're not interested in I'll use your terminology, they're not being reciprocal. To me, come on, let's be real here, right? Relationship. It's both. It's you can't have a relationship unless there's another human involved. Now you could argue and say, well, I have a relationship with myself. Okay, that's a self introspective kind of thing. But to me, you have to, if you are genuinely interested in somebody, I believe that person will genuinely receive that and reach back out and acknowledge it, because that's how you make that connection. There are some people you just don't connect with. You meet, but you don't have the visceral connection with the person. It's more surface level. But when it starts to, when you, and you don't have to be a fanatic to admire somebody. You know, I mean, like, the idea is we read all these books that we do, and I could see in the background there you got a whole bookcase full, right? Well, same thing for me, right? And those books are reminders to me. Sometimes the book will just, like, I look at a book like you just said when you were looking at Warren Buffett's grass, the patch of grass. I look at the book and I go, you know what? I need to go back and read that book, or I need to. There was something. There was a chapter in there. It's like they're reminders of your journey. They are, they kind of, I don't know how to say validate, but having the book, the physical book, provided you read it, is kind of like that is your what's the word I'm looking for, Jay? It's kind of like your walk of life, where you've been. Your and I'm struggling here because I had it and it left me. But the idea is those books represent your studies. They represent your interests. They kind of represent who you are in many ways. And I think it's important. And I digressed on the book thing. I want to go back to the relationship thing. The thing that we probably didn't talk about, and I don't know if you have time to do it, but there's the other side to relationships, and that's just like having a relationship with your spouse, having a relationship with people at work, having relationships with your children, with your friends. And it requires work. Some relationships are very easy. There's no drama. It's pretty much, it just flows like water. Other relationships are more tumultuous. They require work. Sometimes you see something in somebody that reminds you of yourself, but not in a good way. It's you're almost like oil and water, and you go, wait a minute, what it is? And I know it's because I'm looking in a mirror right now. Maybe I don't like what I see because it's it's reflective of a characteristic of mine that I don't really like. I'm going down another lane
No,
here, but
that's yeah, go ahead.
no, please.
Well, I would say that even, what if the vitriol or the anger, the venom, is proportional to even that awareness? So the less aware that you are that it's a projection of yourself, the more angry you are. Like
That's
Dostoevsky, that like there, yeah. So, and it doesn't mean there isn't value in the observation. Like you could be right and still be wrong. This is where, well, actually, I'm thinking through some of this in this excerpt, because that's the towards the end where, therefore, see in the middle section here, let's go even further, say that relationships are the transference of energy
yes,
and the alignment of beliefs that translate into common actions. Therefore, transference of thought, energy, and the acceptance of belief lead to mutually beneficial actions that strengthen the mind, heart, and spirit of all parties involved in the relationship. This is love. I bring love up because you mentioned that some relationships are harder.
yes,
Those relationships are the test of our capacity for love. That's been a theme um in the book. And I tried to elaborate on it earlier when I was preparing for this. What is mind? How do we mean by heart? And what of spirit? The mind is an accumulation of relationships and their consequences. Heart is how the relationships occur. Spirit are the composite accumulation or practice of relating. how we relate, and that we are capable of relating to another, relating to another's relation of our relation. So like how people relate. So the people that are the biggest dicks will reveal our how much of a dick we are. How we relate to the ass reveals our capacity for being an ass ourselves. That's
That's
an argument that I'm trying to
mm,
flesh out in the text.
well,
Is yeah. Thoughts?
yeah, no, I think, yeah, you're kind of speaking back to the idea that you're seeing, well, okay, so there's self-awareness, right? There's self-awareness, and then there's being aware of what's around you. Some of us are very hyper aware of others. Remember, we talked about behaviors. Remember, we talked about in our last one, the Machiavellian type, right? Well, as you read more, write more, listen to what is unsaid, and speak to let go, you know, this whole development that you go through, you start to observe things. Now, there could be a natural instinct. Let's not forget about gut instinct and just being able to recognize something intuitively. You don't have to be educated to see something is not right, right? You feel it. So there's that visceral reaction. But as you educate yourself more and as you have more life experiences, you start to read people and you start to understand how to navigate it. Oh, I kind of got to read on this person. Therefore, this is what I need to do to temper myself a little bit in order to be able to communicate with this person. Sometimes you find yourself having to acquiesce, even though nobody likes that word, especially in business. I don't acquiesce. I'm a bulldozer. I go forward. It's, you know, my way or the highway. And, you know, whoever gets left in my wake, so be it. Great. And that might work for you. But if you want to have a true relationship with somebody, whether it's professional or in your relationship with your spouse or whatever, you have to sometimes pull back a little bit, temper yourself, listen, be a more empathetic, in order to get a read and to make sure that you're creating that connection, or that what's the word, that you're communicating with that person. Otherwise, you're not really communicating. You're not even listening. So, you know, talking at somebody versus like you and I are actually having a real true conversation. We listen to each other. Somebody says something, it sparks something. So to your point, going back to what I was hearing you say about that mirror reflection, you're seeing something. If you see somebody's an ass, are they an ass, or are you seeing the ass in yourself in them? You know, kind of a thing.
Both can be true simultaneously,
Yeah.
but how we relate to their relation
Mm-hmm.
reveals our capacity to relate. Now
Boom,
the yeah, but this
boom,
is the really
boom.
scary part, and I'm kind of at a crossroads here. If you like who wins, right? Well, the person that's willing to kill you is going to win. Like here, the person that's willing to cheat is going to win in the short term.
Which
But
sucks, doesn't it?
yeah, well, yeah. Oh, for if you're competing on this plane
Yeah.
of existence, it definitely does suck to lose. Um, now I guess this is the whole concept of faith is if you don't cheat, you win something greater. But it that's my kind of caveat to the what
Mm-hmm.
I said about the relate, like both parties can be, yes, because you hear this dichotomy a lot. Either oh, especially like social platforms really, this clicks well. Like any concept of don't listen to insert.
Right.
They're just projecting. It's like, first of all of us are a projection. Like everyone is all the time ad infinitum. the question becomes like, what is most valuable? What is highest? What is useful? What's the solution to the problem? Like, what's the truth? It's partial truths on both sides. So if we live this ideology that, don't listen, insert whatever, that eventually undermines itself.
Yes, it
It's an
does.
undermining human phenomenon. So I guess this is like this has become a fun. We'll close it out here. But the whole thing is that I think someone that's willing to take on this concept of how I relate to your relating of me, I could choose to love, like I could choose compassion, forgiveness, but it doesn't mean I'm gonna win. Meaning, like I might lose, and then I become Job. I lose everything. Uh, the concept though is that at least I won something greater than. It's like not to lose myself in the process or in the mission. But like I guess the simpler way to explain this is there are genuinely dark people in the world,
Yes.
and simultaneously I have to be aware that there are degrees of darkness within me. And every day make a choice like, don't do that, do this. Oh, is this the right thing? And so like a smile and a hug might not convince a burglar to leave the house without a gun. That's kind
That
of
is
like
really good.
I'm starting to, if anybody watches the show after all these years, I'm starting to mature a little bit because I've had this, I want, I'm not Jesus, like clearly, but the point is like there's a love and faith, there's a love and forgiveness, but like, the burglar might not leave the house with a smile
Yeah.
and a hug. So what do you do?
Yeah. There's a time and place. There's a time and
Paul,
place
close
for,
us out here. How do we make this,
oh my gosh.
we
What
got
can I
three
say?
minutes. Yeah.
Number one, listen, brother. So in my, I'll close this out. Number one, we could talk about this ad infinitum, as you said, because there's so much more to this. If we could talk about what is truth. I think we have a few more podcasts ahead of us. But I'll use a line that my son always says to me, and it may not go well with the burglar, but it definitely is something I try to live my life by, and that is simple pleasantries go a long way in life. Just be kind to other people. All right. That's a really important thing that we lose. Don't be so quick to influence somebody to your way of thinking. Be a better listener, and just treat your fellow man and woman with some respect. And I think that's how we win over time. And I think that's what humans are just trying to seek. They're trying to seek understanding. They're trying to be heard. They're trying to align themselves with other people that think like them. And so all of us are so desperately trying to push our narrative. But, there's an old saying, talkers are always desperately looking for listeners.
Hmm.
So,
On
obviously,
that note, if you're listening to this podcast, share this with a friend. Please subscribe. Cancel all your plans for the weekend and continue listening to the Culture Matters podcast. And we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate you. And we'll see you next time.